back to Women Making Moves, where we celebrate the moves that women are making. My name is Amy Pons. I'm a Master Certified Life Coach and a Soul Healer. I'm joined today with L'Oreal Thompson Payton. L'Oreal is an award-winning journalist, celebrated author, and influential speaker known for her passionate storytelling and commitment to inspiring and uplifting others. Throughout her distinguished career, L'Oreal has worked with esteemed publications and media outlets such as Essence, Fortune, Self, and Well and Good, contributing insightful personal essays, celebrity interviews, and features that shed light on important societal issues and amplify the voices of marginalized communities. She's also a parenting and wellness advice columnist for Yahoo. With her debut book, Stop Waiting for Perfect, Step Out of Your Comfort Zone and Into Your Power, L'Oreal demonstrates her commitment to empowering others, encouraging them to embrace their full potential and live life boldly. Through her compelling storytelling and thought-provoking insights, L'Oreal continues to inspire audiences around the world to overcome challenges and embrace personal growth. A native Marylander, L'Oreal lives just outside of Chicago with her very patient husband and vivacious daughter. L'Oreal, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Of course, the true nature of Women Making Moves, we had a full conversation before we hit record. We were actually talking about Beyonce and her new album and all the things. So if that folds in, I'd love to hear more about what you think. You love it, right?
I am obsessed and literally wrote in my newsletter this morning, I feel like it's her best work yet, which is also her words, not mine. Like in the press release from Parkwood, she said some of her best music to date. And it's just rich and cinematic and this comprehensive body of work that, I feel like since self-titled dropped in 2013, and caught all of us off guard, I've been thinking how is she going to top this? And then Lemonade, and then Coachella, and then the Lion King soundtrack, which doesn't get enough credit in my opinion. And it's just continually, she's in her own category. As she said about Cowboy Carter, this isn't a country album. This is a Beyonce album. She is her own genre at this point, and I have no choice but to stand.
I love that you called it a body of work because in our effort, our being the society, the collective for thousands of years, but over the past 100 specifically, even in Celebrityville and music, everyone's forced to fit themselves into a predetermined category or genre. I love that. She's this is a Beyonce album. That's a body of work. And so the thing that I really resonate with what you just said about that is that for me personally, I was on that path for almost 20 years where I had to do just one thing in life. And bios are one of the biggest challenges for me because it's I don't ever want to do one thing again and then beyond the titles and all that kind of stuff. It's this new way of working and being and living. And it's awesome that someone like Beyonce is leading that charge once again to break down those norms and say, can we just create music?
Yes. Yeah. And she said something too about, there's no rules. She was talking about specifically creating music, but I take that, as a creative and as a writer for my own work at all. She is constantly inspiring. I've been Beehive since before Beehive, listening to Destiny's Child back in 1997. And so throughout my career and my life, I can point to a different Beyonce song that's inspired me and my work, but then even more than her music, her artistry, her business acumen, right? Her family life shows me that, okay, I can have it all, right? Because that's something I feel like we've been told time and time again, especially as Black women, that you can't. And so she represents to me what is possible and just inspires me then to create my best work because, we're not limited to the boxes that society puts us in, and we can do more than one thing. We can reach across genres and, these categories and just be fully ourselves. And she's given permission for so many of us to do that. And so I feel really inspired. Every time a new album drops, every time I go to one of her shows or see a performance, I'm inspired to then create my own best personal work. And that's, I think, what's really at the heart of it is your own best and whatever that looks like. And as we said before, I was talking about, keeping your eyes on your own paper and recognizing that you are your only competition. My job now as an author, I feel is to do better than my last book and not necessarily better than this person or that person and get distracted by social media and all of the noise, but really to focus and, just kind of raise the bar for myself and just keep that front of mind.
No one can do what you can do, how you do it.
Yes.
And in that respect, none of us have any competition. It's about returning, for me at least, is about returning to my unique brilliance.
Yeah.
And artists, creatives, to your point, like Beyonce, giving especially women permission to do that, to return back to whatever that looks like for you. And oh, by the way, yes, because we live in a world that we can't barter completely yet, we need to make some money. Yes. But it's just like, you can figure that out in both ways. And what's actually really beautiful is that when you are living your soul essence, your unique brilliance, when you're living that, there's effort. Of course, that saying that is, walk the path and it will appear. It's like, yes. And figuring out what that can look like. And when you're living that soul essence, it is literally infinite. It's just incredible. So what a way to kick
magical. And I'm like in that stage right now. I mean, I just quit my full-time job last September.
Congrats.
On the brink of, thank you, my first book launch and all of the things. And it was just, and at the time that we met in person at the Fairway dinner, I was really struggling. I was putting myself or trying to fit, I feel like, into a box that was never really meant for me because I have so many aspirations, so many gifts. And I know that sounds like bragging, but it's true. And I was, doing myself and my gifts a disservice by trying to limit myself to this 9-to-5 role that I was in, trying to play by the rules of mainstream media that don't really work or serve Black women, especially. And so rejecting that and coming into my own, as a full-time freelance writer, as an author, as a yoga teacher, like all of these things and pieces make up the whole of L'Oreal. And there is so much ease now, I feel, in my life and my work. Whereas before there was a lot of effort. There was a lot of, trying to make fetch happen. And now once I've like opened myself up to, the universe and the opportunities, the abundance has been coming, but it took years for me to trust that. And it's ironic because my book was initially titled Trust Your Dopeness. And it was like a mantra that I still love that title, but we found out after the fact that the copyright is owned by a global conglomerate and I do not have global conglomerate lawsuit money and neither does my publisher. So we pivoted and I feel like Stop Waiting for Perfect is perfect because it really met like the moment that I was in, especially as a new mom, first time author and undoing perfectionism myself. Like it was really a masterclass in that, but Trust Your Dopeness was kind of, the catchphrase and the slogan and the mantra that I was living by and encouraging other people to do, but I wasn't 100% doing it myself. It was like, do as I say, not as I do. And now I feel like I am actually living that and trusting that, my gifts are enough, my talent is enough. And, like they will make room for me and opportunities will come to me once I say yes to the path and the purpose that I've always been destined to be on, but just didn't fully trust that I could do it.
Right. Because we weren't taught that. And to your point, today's workplace, the 9-to-5 was not designed with women and people of color in mind.
It's true.
Okay. I want to make sure. I'm like, there's just certain feelings about separating, but it's like, if you're not a white man, it's not, it just wasn't designed. I had to show up. I was constantly getting critiqued on how I showed up. And my unique brilliance is, well, of course I'm a coach now, but I was always going to be that cheerleader. I want to see your unique essence.
Yes.
I want that thing that I've never seen before. Like we've gotten way too far into the copy paste culture. And for me, getting really in touch with my energy and my soul essence, what I know to be true, and this is how I vibe, is that when we talk about energies, divine masculine, again, is that doing, structure, hierarchy. And in the furthest, most radical part of a masculine is what we're seeing now, which is a lot of toxic masculinity, and that it's only about power, order, structure, money. Divine feminine, flowing, trusting, believing, and creating, birthing. And when they work together, we need both. And the balance, of course. When those come together, it's such a gorgeous harmony of the divine masculine holds that structure in place so that whatever we're birthing in the feminine can grow and be what it's supposed to be. So anyway, I digress. It's just like the energetics of it all. I finally understand what it means. And I really resonate with what you're saying. I too, when I met you, I was less than a year into my business, I was trying to feel this out and figure out what the heck this is, this being my unique brilliance and my unique spirit. And I too am now living that. You said, let me not brag. Please brag. Funny, I just posted this morning on LinkedIn about self-love versus ego. It is not the same, or self-love versus arrogance. Here's how I explain the difference. Self-love. Tell me you're amazing. Tell me and let it be true. Tell me that. And the difference is when you use that amazingness to exert power over someone else, that becomes the arrogance or the ego led.
Yeah.
When you're talking to me about your soul essence, that's coming from your soul. That is not ego. Please brag. I want more of that.
Yeah. Thank you. I love that framing. And because I say it and it's like, because we're so concerned, or I'm so concerned, I'll speak for myself, 36 years of recovering people pleaser, right? And you want to be, the good girl and don't make anyone upset. And so starting to lean into that, because it's like, I know I have the receipts, I have the accolades, I have the resume that can back all of that up. So yeah, and it reminds, I could tie everything to Beyonce, but she sings an ego. And so it's like, I talk real shit because I can back it up. And that's always not received when it comes from a Black woman, especially, Beyonce maybe, but like I'm very much Fenty 420 foundation, 4C hair, and like there is no mistaking like, okay, like she black. And so there's like that line, I feel like that you kind of have to tiptoe and, you don't want to make people uncomfortable and you can't be the angry Black woman, but it's sometimes like I am angry and rightfully so. So it's all of that, like so many layers.
I will never correct you and I will never pretend that I know exactly what you're talking about from what you experienced. And I will also say, if someone is uncomfortable, that's theirs, not yours. For me, I unsubscribe and I remove my energy from anywhere that I'm not able to celebrate my unique brilliance. So I encourage you, please brag. Please tell me how amazing you are. Please tell everyone. L'Oreal, what moves are you excited to be making right now?
So many. 6 months into full-time freelancing, and it certainly hasn't been an easy ride. There's certainly been a roller coaster, a lot of highs and lows, but I feel like now I'm starting to figure it out. And it's interesting because this is actually my second time going full-time freelance. The last time was short-lived. There was like 3-month parental leave in the middle of it. And then I returned to a full-time job shortly thereafter. And so I have it on my vision board right in front of my desk, like entrepreneurship in big, bold letters. And I'm giving myself a year to try to figure it out, to bet on me. And it's paying off. Recently, I had my first 10K month, which 6 months ago, I did not think was possible. So really celebrating that. And it's really fulfilling because it's like, I did that. Like that is the result of work that I did. And it's so amazing and gratifying. And it's work that I enjoyed, right? Like that was one of the biggest reasons I left my last role. And I told my husband repeatedly, I was just like, I want the time and space to write quality, meaningful stories. Like that was the North Star. And I have been able to do that and also tap into others' talents and skills with speaking engagements, with the yoga teaching and other things that again didn't fit into that box. So what I'm excited to do in the moves making is more of that and working on my second book proposal. I want to write an infertility memoir and just really dive into reproductive health and maternal health in this country, especially as it relates to Black women and the mental health part of that as well. My experience in postpartum depression and anxiety. And so just, talking about the things that people don't always talk about, especially from people who look like me. And in our community, I feel like it's even still a little bit taboo to talk about infertility and mental health and antidepressants and things like that. So just bigger. And my word for 2024. I was about to say 2024. And I was like, that sounded weird. Was just like elevate and expand. And so thinking bigger and coming back with some more of my like owned media under the LT in the City umbrella. I have the newsletter, I have the podcast. So thinking bigger with that and just, kind of trying to get on my like Issa Rae Oprah shit and have my own multimedia empire over here. And so a lot of a lot of big things in the works. And I feel very much like I'm just getting started, in this kind of late 30s phase. And it's exciting and exhilarating and a little bit intimidating, but also fun to kind of reinvent the rules and chart a different course in a different way for my daughter, especially. Like, I grew up and I just saw my mom working all the time and not really enjoying the work, that she did, but did it to provide for us, which I'm so grateful for, and can sit here now, like, from a place of privilege because of the sacrifices that she made. And I know that came with a lot of stress and turmoil and, with the physical health and mental health and everything. So I just want to show my daughter that, hey, there's a different way. There's a softer way of being. And you don't always have to be the strong Black woman. You can create your own rules. You can create your own category. There are no limits to what you can do. But in order to say that to her and mean it, I have to show her. And that means I have to do it. So that's been a really interesting process as well.
You're creating the new way for us to think about how we live, how we do life. And we talked about this a little bit, but I don't know whether it's because of all the technology that we have now and that we can build these types of things on our own. But to your point, you did that. Every dollar we earn, like, it's our unique brilliance shining through. And that reinforces and builds up what we can do out here. And it's to, even in our own worlds as entrepreneurs, important not to put all of your eggs in one basket, which is, we used to do that as a 9 to 5. It's like that was the only thing we could do, at least for me. And it was like, it's kind of baffling. It's mind blowing to think about where I was at least even 5 or 6 years ago. And a lot of what you say really, really lands. I just made a post last week about supporting. There was a meme about Jessica Petway, the social influencer who was misdiagnosed and died of cervical cancer. As a Black woman, like, she was not believed. Mm-hmm. And the mortality rate, I love that you are focusing on that, because overall, women's bodies were not in Western medicine books and like textbooks until the 90s. And then it's like, so there, first of all, there's so much catch up, but also there's still that stigma, especially for Black women in the US, dying at rapid rates across the board. And so you mentioned about infertility and mental health. What are you creating in that space? Is there going to be like an ongoing conversation happening?
Yeah, the first step is the proposal. So I sent the synopsis to my agent and she's like, this is great. Send me the first 500 or 500. Oh gosh, that would be awful. 50 to 100 pages. And I was like, cool. I have 10. So working on that. And I'm being very deliberate this time around because it was such a blur writing the first book. Like, I had the idea in 2015, started writing the proposal in 2017. I got my current agent in 2020 and the book deal in 2021. And at the same time that after 5 failed IVF rounds, or 4 failed ones, she was the 5th, we got the positive pregnancy. And so it was like all of these things are happening at the same time. It was such a blur writing the first book. And I did it and it's great. And I want to do it differently this time around and create the outline and the timeline and do the heavy research and the interview and like all of this, be very intentional about it and creating it because, where stop waiting for perfect. I mean, it could certainly apply to personal life as well. It is very much like career minded. And it was interesting because I read this meme recently. It talks about like, why are leadership books by men categorized, in the business category at the bookstore, and the same books by women are in the self-help section. And so it's like, okay, it can certainly apply to personal and professional. And with this memoir and talking about kind of this 6-year span, right, from my history with fibroids and getting those removed, and also, having to fight for that diagnosis. It took 3 years and multiple doctors because no one believed me. I'm meanwhile like bleeding out every month. It was just, to get super TMI, like through the ultra tampon, the overnight pad, my sweatpants into the sofa cushion. That happened multiple times. I missed friends' weddings, birthdays because I was in the bathroom, it was just awful. And time and time again, they were like, oh, we'll try this birth control. We'll try that. I was like, I know I have fibroids. I have a family history of fibroids. Can you remove these? And when I finally found someone to listen and who believed me, they ended up removing about 17 fibroids. Like I had the uterus of someone who was 4 months pregnant and I wasn't pregnant. And it was awful and it was miserable. And when they were removed, the doctor was like, okay, if you want to have kids, like now is the time. And I'm like, sir, I work for a nonprofit and we live in a 1 bedroom. Like, no, now is not the time. And we waited. And I felt a lot of guilt later because I was very career minded and wanted to, get the salary and the certain title and everything because I knew that my career trajectory is going to look different from my husband's once we do have kids. Like that's just the society that we live in. So I want to make sure that we're good and prepared. And we started trying and it wasn't happening. And I know my body. So I was like, something's not right. And, we both got tested and they found that I had blocked fallopian tubes, most likely from the scar tissue from the surgery to remove the fibroids. And it just all kind of went downhill from there. And the mental health part of it is important to me because I just feel like there's not enough conversation around. There is a lot with postpartum depression, but I experienced perinatal depression, like while I was pregnant, PTSD from the infertility. I was very anxious the first 2 trimesters because I didn't trust that my body was actually going to carry a tiny human to life, like to labor, like this would actually work. And so, but no one talks about that side of it. And a lot of people, and I remember when I first started writing about our infertility journey and had asked my husband, because so much of what I've written before was just about like me and, those kind of personal essays. And this really involved both of us. And he was like, I feel like you kind of have to, and not in a way that any of us are, owe other people our stories, but also I was looking for the stories from the young Black women going through IVF and I didn't see them in media. I didn't see, I mean, of course, like Chrissy Teigen, who's not Black, but I mean, just like in terms of women who are very vocal about their infertility experience, and Michelle Obama in her memoir. But even then, like these are celebrities and they have money and they have access. So what am I supposed to do? And, in the clinic looking around and didn't see people who looked like us, didn't see Black babies on the yellow bulletin board, right? Like the success stories. And so it takes what's already this isolating experience and makes it even more isolating when you don't see people who look like you and share a similar background. And so there's a lot. And then I feel like kind of wash our hands at the 6-week appointment and like, okay, you had a baby, then like go about your life. And it's like, oh no, like things are not the same physically, mentally, and just wanting to share candidly what that all looks like, what it is like being, I don't love the phrase working mom, like, cause it is labor, like whether you earn a paycheck or not, but I don't know what else to call it. Society is not built for that. Was a large part too in going freelance because I was like, something has to give. And I had this awakening, last summer when my daughter come home from daycare and I didn't have the energy to play with her because I was giving everything to this 9 to 5. And I was like, that's not what I want in my life, in my career right now. And so there has to be another way. And that's what I'm figuring out now. But I want to write it as kind of this blueprint or roadmap for other people who are kind of like, is it just me? Am I the only one experience this? Or maybe to help them, and they have a friend who's going through IVF and they don't know what to say and they don't know what it's like have this be kind of a guide for, all people who are impacted by this.
Something has to give.
Yeah.
I look at so many of our systems, healthcare, retirement. I mean, you could probably name any of them that are like in the US specifically. They were designed with one type of person in mind, and many of the systems haven't aged well.
No, not at all.
Part of how I think about how I'm helping that shift is that just having these conversations, bringing more to light through my coaching, like helping other women unsubscribe to what doesn't serve them.
Yeah.
You doing the same thing through your amazing words.
Okay.
Is it more of this? Sometimes I can get overwhelmed with how much there is that needs to shift or change. What do you think the big flip is going to be
I thought it was going to be the pandemic, but I feel like, and it was short term, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
in 2020,
Yeah.
2021, and now we're back to our old ways. And it's, which is really disheartening to see
Right?
because I'm
Yeah.
just like, there was potential
Yeah.
there and
Yeah.
possibility. And so I think that there are, people like us who have like, I can't go back to the way things were and are paving and forging a new way. And I think in that, in leading by example and showing people what's possible, it lets them know like, hey, there are options here. I remember back in 2018, I did a women's leadership program here in Chicago called Willie's Warriors. It was named after a local woman who'd done some amazing work in the Chicagoland area, Reverend Willie Barrow. And one of the guest speakers talked to us about how, our leadership does not look like white men, but that's been the only frame of reference for leadership for centuries. And when she said it, something unlocked in me and kind of gave me permission of like, okay, it's okay that you're not, like super hardcore and I wake up at 5 and I work out for 2 hours and then I go like, because
Yeah.
that's just not me. It's never have been and never will be. So there is this softer, more compassionate, and because we are doing the work and have done the work, I mean, the civil rights movement was led by Black women. I mean, I know, MLK and Malcolm X get all the glory, but I mean, like there were Black women doing the work as well. And our leadership looks different. It looks like the moms of the Black people who have been slain by the hands of police and in their communities and gun violence. And it looks like, the organizers, and actually I interviewed Tansy McNulty last week of 1 Million Madly Motivated Moms, and which is also on a mission to end gun violence by 2038. And what she was saying, like it looks different for everyone, right? Like your activism looks different from my activism. My activism is largely tied up in storytelling, whether that's through my newsletter, my articles, the books that I'm writing, even the yoga that I do, like is very much, it's not your core power yoga, right? It's not, it is very centered. It is honoring the roots of yoga, right? From all of that philosophy and everything. So it's just an inclusive in nature, and that is activism as well. And so I think, like not all of us are meant to be on the front lines with our picket signs, and that's okay, right? I think like, especially in summer 2020, there was a lot of that, and there are people who that is their activism, and that is great. But it doesn't mean that anyone else's activism is less than because you're not on the front lines. And so I think similarly in our professions, just showing people there's more than one way, there are options, and sort of giving and showing, again, leading by example to other people who are like, okay, well, if she can do it, then maybe I can too. And let me see what that looks like. Let me explore. Let me ask questions. Let me try. Let me pivot. Let me pause. Let me quit something altogether and just try. And that's what I write about in the book. I mean, that's the whole impetus behind stop waiting for that perfect moment to take a risk and make a change or switch careers or become an entrepreneur. Like that perfect moment does not exist. If you are waiting for it, you will be waiting for the rest of your life. The time is now. And not saying you got to go all in immediately, right? You can take the baby steps and experiment. And you can always go back, right, to the 9 to 5 or whatever it is. Like you can always make that decision, and you are worth to try. Like you are worth the risk, the leap of faith, and just to, experiment, toy around with what's possible and see what else is out there. You don't have to limit yourself and put yourself in a box. And I think the more of us that do that and push back against these systems, and I do see it in certain companies like Body and Babylist, which are all like these women-led, mom-led, especially organizations that are being very intentional about how the culture, the work culture, and making it different and recognizing that what worked before does not serve everybody. And so how can we make this more inclusive? There are people pushing back. And so I'm optimistic because I feel like I have no choice but to be, especially as a mom, I have to have some dose of optimism. And so I am optimistic that the tide is changing slowly, but it is changing nevertheless. And so hopefully by the time my daughter is in the workforce, it'll look different, if she decides to go the 9 to 5 route, or, and also there will be systems in place if she goes the artsy or the entrepreneur route or the creative, like that will also be better in serving her and people like her. So I have to believe that it's getting better very slowly, but surely.
I agree. Some days I get super overwhelmed, but most days I meet with women like yourself. Women are the ones shifting the tide.
Yeah.
And it's with love, compassion, empathy to show to everyone there's another way we can do this. And I think the unfortunate part is that it's led to, it's from the, pandemic, there's huge great resignation because once again, women, most of the responsibility was falling on women. So I think it's a big part of us coming out on the other side and saying, okay, let's shift this, let's change this. And a lot of women are unsubscribing to the 9 to 5 world, including world leaders.
Yes.
It takes all of us. It's like, I want to be able to support women to be in the workforce as long as possible. And when it gets to the point that your mental health or your overall well-being is compromised, then it's a time to step away. When that time, if by any degree you're ready to shift, we're here for you. Like we're here to help you in that process and whatever that looks like, which leads me to a post that you made recently on LinkedIn that I felt in my soul from 5 days ago. 1, rejection is disappointing. 3 in 1 week that had the potential to propel your career as an author is devastating, but nevertheless, I persist. I wrote a chapter about celebrating rejections in my book, Stop Waiting for Perfect, and recently shared some real-time rejection in my newsletter. While I'm not quite at the celebrating stage yet, still in my one-woman pity party phase than you, I am proud of myself for trying, for throwing my hat in the ring, for betting on myself. Perhaps this will inspire you to do the same. Oh my gosh, L'Oreal. I read this. I was like, oh my gosh, she sees me. Because to your point, so I'm a year in business for myself and peaks and valleys the whole day. And at first I had so much anger and rage from my experience in the 9 to 5. And to your point, my activism looks different. And I had so much rage. And now beautifully, I did so much healing and growth in 23 so that I can come out on 24 and say, first of all, rage is beautiful. Rage, anger. And it's also an invitation to say, woo, okay, let's feel that. Let's come together, feel it, and then take an inspired, aligned action toward what we do want in this world. So anyway, I felt this in my bones because rejection is such a huge part of entrepreneurship and betting on yourself. Tell me about this post. I feel seen. Thank you for posting it and putting out there.
That was a very trying, very humbling week, I will say. There was these 3 opportunities, fellowship at Northwestern. The biggest one I was upset with is this retreat that takes place in the summer and is for Black women writers in Austin. So would be a dream to have a week uninterrupted, right? Away from the baby and all the other responsibilities to focus on. I had in my mind, I already had it mapped out. I'm going to work on the memoir and it's going to be great. And then the second one was, I don't even remember what the second rejection was. But anyway, it was like boom, boom, boom within a 1 week period. And so it sucked. It still sucks. And I sat with that because I think like you, the rose colored glass is very quick to brush it off and move past it. Even earlier this year, Chicago Reader had their Best of awards, and I came in second runner up for Best Nonfiction Writer, which once I said it and everyone else was like, congratulations, that's amazing. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I lost. I came in third, third place that's not winning. And I was very happy for my friend Taylor who did win, and also disappointed. And so 2 things can be true, right? All of these feelings are valid. And that's something that I have to work on, as well as an Enneagram 3. I'm allergic to feelings. I'm a high achiever, and work is the safety zone. Feeling feelings is uncomfortable. Feeling those undesirable feelings shame and jealousy and anger and resentment and disappointment is also uncomfortable and necessary, right? Like you have to sit with it. You have to acknowledge the feelings and let them kind of do their thing and marinate. And then once you've done that, it's like, okay, this opportunity wasn't for me right now. And at the same time, like this time last year, I wasn't applying to fellowship. It was a grant. That was the second one. A grant from a foundation. I think that was like $7,500 to work on a project. And so all of these would have been really great opportunities. And so I was disappointed that I didn't get them, and also proud of myself for trying, for putting myself out there, for applying, because so often we don't even get that far. And that's why I encourage people, and I write in the book and I wrote in that newsletter, to, once you're ready, celebrate the rejection, because the rejection means that you tried. And so many people don't even get that far. Like the rejection is proof of concept. I applied for a thing and I gave it my all. It didn't work out this time. And now I know, instead of not doing it and wondering what if, and not taking that chance or that risk. And so it's just holding it. That's what I learned a lot through yoga too. One of my favorite teachers, Dr. Chelsea Jackson Roberts, who does yoga for Peloton, talks often about the both and I think we live in a very binary world. It's very black and white, but feelings are not black and white. And a lot of them lay in that kind of gray area and can be uncomfortable. And, you know, simultaneously, you can be happy for the people who were selected and also feel, you know, these other feelings for yourself. And that's okay. That means you're human. Because I think, you know, especially in our society, that to admit jealousy or anything other than 100% happiness for someone else is, you know, like, oh my gosh. But I remember this greeting card actually that I saw at a bookstore, and I got it from one of my friends who write about the book as well, because I was jealous that she published her book before mine came out, and we love each other. She is my best friend. I love her dearly. And this card summarized it perfectly, where it's like, I'm 97% happy for you and 3% jealous. And I'm being honest. And those things, both of those things can be true at once. We are complicated beings. We contain multitudes. We can feel more than one feeling at the same time, and it doesn't make us a bad person. And I think that's just something I want to reiterate to people, because like there can be a lot of shame tied up in some of those feelings, but no, it just means you're human.
Yeah, duality is so gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
And giving space to that, especially to other women on this journey, is amazing, because while I do embrace the suck, yes, and I also do I firmly believe the universe will provide different experiences in your pathway to both show you how far you've come and how far you might still want to go, whatever that looks like. And I do always find that there was always a reason that that opportunity did not come to fruition, or I always see the reason, however long it takes. And so again, I get to be both and, like, sometimes it sucks, and I know that it's all for me, toward my highest self, toward my highest purpose, whether it's universe, source, creator, God. It's understanding that everything that you're given is a lesson in some way and unfolding towards your path. So again, thank you for posting that.
Now, my mom is always like, you know, what's meant for you is for you, and nobody else can take it away. And so I try to keep that in front of mine.
You can never miss what's meant for you, and trusting wholeheartedly in that helps on those days where there might be something that stings a little bit. So, L'Oreal, what would you say to folks who both understand what we're talking about? Like, yeah, we were feeling pinched. We were feeling like specifically I'll call on something we both felt, which was the 9 to 5 was limiting and kind of keeping us in the box. What would you say to people that both understand that notion and are like, I couldn't possibly XYZ, but also those are like, that are feeling it and they're like, how do you even start?
I mean, I just always invite people to first get quiet and get still. And whatever that looks like for you, if it's meditation, if it's journaling, if it's prayer, if it's yoga, if it's a walking meditation, you know, out in the woods or a hike or at the beach or something, getting in touch, you know, with yourself and nature especially can be very healing and reinvigorating. I remember especially during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, and I was feeling that tension. I was in a nonprofit PR role at the time and feeling this pull back to editorial and to journalism, which I had done previously in my career before making that pivot, and just wondering, like, can I do that? Can I go back? Can I take this risk and bet on myself? I was thinking about, doing freelance and listen to a lot of great meditations on Insight Timer. Actually, I can send you the links to the specific ones, but it was by like Liza Culpa. They had a lot of really great guided meditations that helped me, but that getting quiet and listening to your inner voice is so important because, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of noise out here in society. There's social media. There's also the opinions of your loved ones. And even if they mean well, sometimes they don't get it. Or they want to keep you, safe and like, oh, but we know this is safe. This is a guaranteed thing. Don't take that risk. Your inner critic, I write about in the book as well. Mine is named Negative Nancy, can be very loud and very wrong. But again, means well, is trying to keep you safe, trying to keep you in that comfort zone. And we all know that the magic exists outside of the comfort zone. And so you can stay, where it's comfortable and it's cozy and you've got your blanket and your sweatpants and your candle and things are great. And that is limiting yourself. You have so much to share, and taking that step. That's why I've also kind of like reframed imposter syndrome for myself. I used to feel it very heavily and sometimes still, but what I'm doing now is recognizing it as a kind of warning sign of like, I'm doing something different. I'm doing something big. I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone. I'm leveling up in some way. So in that regard, the imposter syndrome is good because it means that I'm not stagnant. I'm growing. I'm challenging myself. And that is my invitation to anyone listening to that, to get quiet, listen to your inner voice, not the critic, not your family, not social media, but get quiet and listen to what it is that you want. What is going to bring you happiness? What is success on your terms, right? Like for me, so early in my career was editor-in-chief, 6-figure salary, corner office. And as I've gotten older, I have really adopted Maya Angelou's quote about success. And that's liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it. And I revisit that very often to, oh, is that true? Is that, and like kind of run down it as like this checklist or litmus test. And it might look different right now. Success for me is having enough energy to play with my daughter when she gets home from daycare, and having, supported my family through my work as well, but having that bandwidth, that energy, that mental capacity. And so the definition can change and pivot, and just giving women especially, permission to pivot and to pause and reconsider what life could look like, what their options are, and permission to expand beyond the confines that have been placed on them.
Beautiful. L'Oreal, where do we find you?
Yeah, I'm everywhere at LT in the City on Instagram and Twitter. Primarily my website, ltinthecity.com. You can sign up for my motivational newsletter, and you can buy the book, Stop Waiting for Perfect, anywhere that books are sold. And I narrate the audiobook in case you want to give that a try too.
So fun. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Closing remarks as we start to wrap up.
Thank you for having me, for doing this work, for leading by example, and just showing women what's possible. I think it's revolutionary, radical work, and it's so important, especially in this day and age. And so I'm just grateful to be in this space with you and to hopefully inspire other women to do the same.
Thanks, L'Oreal.
Yes, thank you.